Ollie, let's turn our attention to sport. You love your AFL in WA. The AFL has its Indigenous round, the Doug Nicholls round, coming up. The Port Adelaide Football Club, for some unusual reason, has decided over those 2 weeks of the Nicholls round to change their name from Port Power to Yata Pulti Football Club. How do we think the fans are going to react to that? And what do they actually yell out during the match when they're at the ground?
I think this is where it does become a bit confusing, to be honest, Steve. And, you know, people might think I'm ignorant by saying this, but, you know, the Fremantle Football Club goes down this path by calling themselves Whitelup. And I understand the reasons why they want to do this for the acknowledgement. But if all the clubs go down this path, as you say, it's actually going to create a little bit of confusion. Sure, it might be naive ignorance to not go a little bit further and research it, but you thought you were watching Port Adelaide play or Fremantle play or West Coast play. And as you say, if you're going to be, you know, yelling out the name of Freo or Port Adelaide, are you going to be accused of being racist that weekend, or are you going to be confusing the players? I understand there's got to be acknowledgement in here, and I think, you know, the AFL does a very good job here in being inclusive, and they like to remind us how inclusive they are as well. But is this just becoming almost tokenistic, and therefore it's going to, you know, lose its value in being something that is culturally sensitive by just, you know, confusing and ultimately almost alienating a bunch of the supporter base. So I think they've got to consider this, whether or not they end up going with the dual names and they have that, you know, underneath the football club's name in brackets or whatever it might be. Maybe that's an option. But I just wonder if it ends up becoming just a little bit too tokenistic and everything becomes a little bit too cynical about the purpose and the reason for doing this, Steve.
Yeah, I think tokenistic is the right word. I mean, I mentioned TV executives spitting their red wine out when that Peter Dutton announcement was made. Imagine the AFL. They make more money out of sports betting than anyone. Have a listen to Peter Dutton about 20 minutes ago when he made this announcement.
I announced that a coalition government will move to ban sports betting advertising during the broadcasting of games. Ads would be banned for an hour each side of a sporting game. Yeah. I encourage the Prime Minister to work with us on this initiative to get it implemented now.
Caleb, AFL game, as you know, goes for 120 minutes. Peter Dutton has just announced there that there'll be no sports betting for 4 hours on commercial television either side of an AFL game. What?
It's just ridiculous. And just on the previous point, I don't know how many Port Adelaide supporters would actually be able to pronounce any of those names. I say that as a good Crow supporter. But the idea...
Well, I think I mangled it myself tonight.
You probably did. That's all right. But
well, I don't think I got it right.
The idea that you can ban these sports betting ads and that's going to stop people from betting is total nonsense. And the money, we have to acknowledge that the money that the bookies pay to outfits like Channel 7 and Foxtel, and of course the money they pay to the AFL in order to be official betting partners, and the money they give in sponsorships to clubs, is money that ultimately flows through to grassroots football. And if you take that money away from them, cuts will have to be made somewhere. Now, yes, the AFL is a big organisation and they make a lot of money tax-free, but they make a significant amount of money out of wagering. And if you start tinkering with that, you will see cuts at the grassroots level, and that's where that money ought to be spent. I don't think it's good for the game. Most people know how to have a punt responsibly. There's a small number of people who, of course, are addicted to gambling and gamble money they shouldn't be gambling, but those people are not going to stop gambling because you took 4 hours worth of ads off television. You're just going to deprive the game and the sport of money it could have otherwise had to invest in kids.
And of course, this betting ban would also apply to NRL. Ollie, is gambling on AFL a problem in WA?
Of course, but I think the AFL opens itself up to this, Steve. I mean, remember earlier in the season, they banned internal tipping competitions. I mean, that's taking it, you know, to the next level, that at AFL House, you can't tip every single week, you know, that you have the office tipping competition and you're all get up each other for who's tipped the winners during the week and who hasn't picked a winner. So I think the AFL's opening itself up to this. I realise that there is an appetite in Australia, and it's probably a growing appetite for some sort of regulation around sports betting and gambling, but that has blindsided, I think, most of Australia today, that Peter Dutton, if in government, would ban the live ads and the gambling ads, as you say, even an hour before and an hour after. TV executives would not like that one iota.
Caleb, I see the vista of the magnificent Sydney Harbour Bridge over your shoulder. You're now in that state going to host the funeral of Barry Humphries, the comic genius who we sadly lost. There has been a huge row today because the family, according to Peter Ford, the entertainment reporter of Barry Humphries, don't want to have anything to do with Daniel Andrews or Victoria because of the way Barry was treated by the comedy festival in this state. That doesn't surprise you, I don't imagine.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, Andrews did not intervene at all when the cowards at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which Barry Humphries co-founded, took the Barry Award away from the festival because he made some comments about transgender people. I'm not surprised at all that they wouldn't want any involvement in that, or Andrews to be involved in that. And for the Prime Minister to come out and say that the Andrews government would be involved, I think blindsided them, and that the idea of a state funeral may very well be off the cards now.
Caleb and Ollie, great to catch up with you both. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.